You don't notice the game while you're in it, at least not at first. It feels like life, like the way things are. You go to school, you learn to follow instructions, you figure out what people want from you and try to give it to them. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. But either way, the system stays the same. You're praised for fitting in, punished for asking too many questions, rewarded for staying inside the lines. Somewhere along the way, it stops feeling like a choice. It starts to feel like gravity, just how things work. Then something small happens. Maybe you get passed over for a job you earned, or a coworker takes credit for your work and no one bats an eye. Maybe you realize the advice you followed so carefully, work hard, be loyal, play fair, didn't lead where you thought it would. That's when the cracks start to show. You begin to notice how some people operate differently. They don't follow the same rules. They move through the system like it's made of paper, not stone. And somehow they get ahead. Not because they're better, but because they understand something you don't, that the rules are negotiable. Most people never get past that first shock. They either retreat, thinking the world is rigged and unfair, or they double down, trying even harder to win a game designed for someone else. But a few start paying attention. Not to the noise, not to the slogans, but to the structure itself. Who benefits? Who doesn't? And what's really being measured? That's where the shift begins. This isn't about becoming a rebel or tearing it all down. That's just another trap. This is about seeing clearly, about understanding how influence works, how power flows, how belief systems are built and defended. Because once you see the mechanics, you stop reacting and start navigating. This is a quiet skill. Not loud, not glamorous, but powerful. You learn to read between the lines, you stop asking for permission, you start making different moves, and eventually, without announcing it, you stop playing the game they handed you, you build your own. Control doesn't always look like chains. Most of the time it looks like comfort, stability. The promise that if you behave, stay productive, and don't ask the wrong questions, you'll be okay. But history doesn't back that up. The people who question the frame, quietly, carefully, are the ones who changed it. The Roman Empire didn't collapse because of outside enemies alone. It collapsed because it became too invested in control. Rituals, hierarchy, bureaucracy. The structure outgrew the purpose. And when that happens, the system starts protecting itself, not the people inside it. That's how empires rot, from the center. Fast forward to the Industrial Revolution. A new kind of control emerges. Factory bells replace church bells. Time gets sliced into shifts. You clock in, you clock out. And for the first time, large groups of people are trained to move in sync. Efficient, predictable, replaceable. It's not called control, it's called progress. The school system follows. Rows of desks, bells between classes. Obedience graded as effort. You learn to sit still, absorb information, and repeat it back on command. Most of us were never taught how to think, only how to remember and comply. That wasn't an accident. It was the easiest way to prepare people to work, not question. The philosopher Michel Foucault studied this pattern, how institutions shape behavior not with force, but with design. Prisons, hospitals, schools, they don't just control people physically. They engineer the way people see themselves. They normalize surveillance, reward conformity, and punish deviation without needing visible punishment. Even religion, for all its moral weight, has been used to preserve systems more than to question them. During the feudal era, the church didn't challenge kings, it crowned them. It taught the poor that their suffering had meaning, that obedience was holy, and that justice would come later. It was a perfect structure. All control, no resistance. This is the deeper architecture most people never examine. It's not just about who's in charge, it's about how belief is managed, how authority is framed, and how rules become invisible once they're taught early enough. The uncomfortable truth is this: control doesn't need to look like a boot on your neck. It works better when it feels like a safety net. And once that clicks, you stop asking why the game feels off and start seeing who built it. Most people think the game is about success. Get the right degree, land the right job, build the right network. Play your cards right, and you'll be rewarded. Maybe not instantly, but eventually. That's the story we're told. And for a while, it even works, until it doesn't. You start seeing patterns. The best ideas don't always win. The hardest workers aren't always promoted. The rules bend for some and harden for others, and the deeper you go, the clearer it becomes. The game isn't about merit. It's about perception, relationships, Leverage. The surface makes it look fair. You fill out the application, submit the resume, smile in the interview. It feels like a meritocracy, but behind the scenes, decisions are made before you walk in. Bias, familiarity, influence, they all shape outcomes long before effort enters the picture. In politics, it's the same. Candidates are paraded like products. Their talking points are tested by focus groups, their gestures rehearsed. But real power isn't on the stage. It's behind the curtain. Lobbyists, donors, corporate boards, they don't campaign. They don't need to. In media, the same illusion holds. You're given options that look different, but say the same thing. A range of voices that never touch the third rail. Outrage is amplified. Nuance is buried. And over time, people stop asking better questions. They pick sides instead. Left or right. Us or them. Always within the lines. Social media accelerates the loop. Likes, shares, clicks. They reward short-term emotion, not long-term clarity. The algorithm isn't built to inform, it's built to engage. So the loudest, angriest, most certain voices rise, not because they're right, but because they feed the machine. And through all this, you're told to keep playing. Compete harder, work longer, stay informed. But what you're really doing is reacting. To systems you didn't design, to narratives you didn't write, to values you never chose. This is the surface, the noise, the performance. The place where energy gets drained and clarity gets lost. Most people live here, cycling through frustration and hope, trying to win a game that was never explained to them clearly. But there's a layer underneath, a structure that doesn't care about appearances. That's what we'll examine next. The surface distracts. The structure decides. Once you stop watching the game and start watching the board, things look different. You begin to notice who sets the terms, who gets early access, who benefits when the rules stay the same. Power doesn't float. It anchors. It embeds itself into institutions, habits, and systems that seem neutral on the outside but are anything but. Think about credit scores presented as objective mathematical truth. But they're built on legacy data, systemic inequality, and assumptions about trust that don't apply evenly. It's not a measure of worth. It's a gatekeeper. Hiring systems are no different. Resumes go through software before a human ever sees them. Keywords matter more than experience. Degrees carry more weight than proof of work. You're not evaluated on what you can do. You're filtered by how well you speak the language of the system, and the system was written by people with very specific interests. Look closer at how influence spreads. It's rarely about quality, it's about access to distribution. If you control the channel, you control the conversation. Legacy media, tech platforms, even academia, each has gatekeepers. Peer review, verification, publishing rights. These sound fair, but in practice, they protect the familiar and delay the new. Money, too, behaves differently beneath the surface. Most people think in terms of salary, but real leverage sits with capital, ownership, assets that make money while you sleep. The structure rewards those who own, not those who labor. And once you see that, hard work starts to look like a tactic to keep people occupied. There's also the matter of visibility. The structure thrives when you don't see it. When you believe your struggle is personal, not systemic. When you blame yourself for falling behind. When you compete with the person next to you instead of asking who built the ladder and why it's tilted. This isn't about victimhood, it's about clarity. About recognizing that most systems aren't broken. They're functioning exactly as designed. And unless you understand the design, you're just another moving part. So the next time something feels unfair or arbitrary, don't just react. Ask who benefits from things staying this way. Ask who built the frame. Because once you learn to see structure, you stop playing by instinct and start playing by design. Most people never make it past awareness, not because they can't, because they don't want to. The structure may be flawed, but it's familiar, predictable, and that makes it feel safe. Even if it's rigged, at least you know the rules, you know what to expect. Change, on the other hand, demands discomfort. It asks you to step into uncertainty, to unlearn what gave you a sense of control, even if that control was an illusion. There's also pride. No one wants to admit they were misled, that the ladder they've been climbing for years doesn't lead where they thought it would. So they double down, defend the system that betrayed them. Call it tradition. Call it patriotism. Call it how the world works. Anything to avoid starting over. The mind resists ambiguity. It prefers a clean story. Good guys, bad guys, success formulas, moral certainty. But real power structures aren't clean. They're messy, overlapping, full of contradictions, and that makes them hard to talk about without sounding paranoid or bitter. So most people just stop talking. Or worse, they mock those who keep asking questions. There's also the pressure of consensus, the unspoken rules of group behavior. You don't challenge the story your family believes. You don't push back in the office meeting. You don't question the official line, because that means standing alone. And standing alone costs more than most people are willing to pay. Even language becomes a trap. Words like fair, normal, or success carry emotional weight. You're taught to chase them without asking who defined them. And when your life doesn't match the image, you blame yourself. You try harder, you stay quiet. You internalize failure that was never yours to begin with. This resistance isn't laziness, it's protection, psychological insulation, a defense against the dissonance of realizing the world is not as advertised. But protection eventually becomes prison. It stops being a shield and starts being a cage. And the irony? The key has always been on the inside. Not easy, not instant, but accessible. The question is whether you're willing to hold the discomfort long enough to see clearly. The shift doesn't happen with a breakthrough. It starts with a pause, a moment when you stop running, stop reacting, and just watch. Not the performance, but the frame around it. Not the rules, but the reason they exist. You start asking quieter questions. Who benefits if I believe this? What do I lose by playing along? What if I stop? This isn't rebellion, it's strategy. Rebellion screams. Strategy observes. It listens to what isn't said. It notices who's never in the room. It watches where the money flows, who gets the benefit of the doubt, who gets second chances, and who doesn't. And then, the deeper realization. Most of the constraints you've lived by weren't physical. They were mental. Belief systems disguised as facts, norms dressed up as morals, standards no one agreed to but everyone enforces. You stop waiting for permission. You stop needing validation. You stop assuming that the game is fair just because it's popular. This shift isn't loud. It's not a declaration. It's subtle. You start saying no when something doesn't fit. You start building outside the map. You spend less time trying to win and more time understanding why you were playing in the first place. You notice how much of your life was about performance. Grades, promotions, likes, compliments, all rewards for fitting the mold. Then you wonder who built the mold. Who profits when you stay inside it? Who gets nervous when you step out? And that's when control begins to slip. Not their control over you. Your control over yourself. You stop outsourcing your worth. You stop living on borrowed definitions. You let go of the performance and start building something rooted, quietly, deliberately on your terms. The shift isn't about flipping the board. It's about no longer being shaped by it. The game is only real if you agree to play it. That's the part no one says out loud. The rule behind all the rules. The permission slip hidden in plain sight. Every system, every hierarchy, every ritual that shapes your daily life. It only works if you cooperate. Not because you're weak, but because the structure depends on quiet agreement. On your willingness to keep showing up, to keep following the script, to keep measuring yourself with borrowed metrics. That's the design. From school to work to politics, the system doesn't force obedience. It rewards it. With grades, with titles, with the illusion of progress. And when those rewards stop coming, you blame yourself. You try harder. You internalize the failure. Not once stopping to ask who wrote the terms of success in the first place. That's how the system sustains itself. Not through violence, through participation. Even your rebellion gets absorbed, marketed, packaged, made safe. You buy the shirt, you post the meme. You feel radical for a moment, but nothing really changes. Because the real shift was never external. It was never about slogans. It was about whether you still see the game as the only option. And most don't. Not because they lack courage, but because they've never seen the exit. It's not marked, it's not advertised. No one tells you the door exists. You have to notice it yourself. That's the final click, the uncomfortable, obvious truth. You're not trapped. You're trained. Trained to compete. Trained to compare. Trained to chase approval you don't need from people you don't respect. Inside systems that weren't built for you. And once you see that, you stop trying to win. You start asking better questions. You start looking for different paths. You start remembering that you were never supposed to fit in. You were supposed to wake up. Awareness without action turns into frustration. You see the game, you see the structure. Now the question is what to do with it. You don't need a revolution, you need a method. Start here. Simple, quiet shifts that change how you move through the system without letting it define you. Audit your beliefs. Take a day and write down what you believe about success, money, authority, intelligence, failure. Then ask where each belief came from. Was it taught, inherited, absorbed? Does it serve you or keep you compliant? Track the patterns. Every system leaves fingerprints. Meetings where the loudest voice wins. Companies that reward appearances over outcomes. Friends who only reach out when they need something. Once you notice a pattern, you're no longer at its mercy. Protect your energy. Stop trying to fix broken systems from the inside if you're not being paid, heard, or respected. Use that energy to build leverage, skills, assets, connections that move with you, not for them. Define your metrics. Decide what progress means to you. Is it income, time freedom, autonomy, integrity? Pick 3. Let them guide your decisions. If you don't choose your metrics, someone else will. Practice strategic silence. You don't need to explain your shift. You don't need to justify your moves. Let people wonder. Let systems adjust. Quiet action creates tension. That tension gives you room to maneuver. Build parallel systems. Don't waste time begging for a seat at their table. Build your own. That could mean launching your own business, learning a skill that makes you independent, or finding others who see what you see. Small scale. High trust. Real alignment. Exit slowly if needed. Don't burn the structure down. Walk out when it no longer holds you. Some people can leave immediately. Others need to build a bridge first, financially, emotionally, logistically. But the exit exists. Quiet planning makes it real. These are not quick wins. They are long games. You won't get applause. You won't get validation, but you will get something better. Clarity, leverage, direction. You'll know where you're going and why. Because the real shift is this. You're no longer asking how to win their game. You're learning how to stop needing it. Most people spend their lives chasing rules they didn't write. They measure success with someone else's ruler. They climb ladders propped against the wrong walls. They wait for recognition that never comes, from systems that were never built to see them. But once you see the game, you can't unsee it. And once you stop playing to win approval, you start playing for leverage, clarity, and control. Not over others, but over your time, your focus, your decisions. That's the shift. Quiet, unapologetic, permanent. So ask yourself right now, what part of your life still runs on borrowed rules? And how much longer are you willing to play by them?